It is the second Monday of June, and Jacob Johnson from Marble City Pharmacy joins us this morning. And good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Jimmy Dale. Good morning.
Bruce Carr on a little bit earlier, and we talked about rainy days and Mondays. Man, we had some rain, hadn't we?
Yesterday, I got caught out in it yesterday, and it was nasty.
Yeah, it'll come and it's gone and sunshine.
And then it was beautiful. Yeah.
Hey, this morning we're talking about osteoporosis, and easy for you to say.
Yeah, you got to get a running start at it.
What is that?
Osteoporosis. It is a disease of the bones. And so what we don't understand, we think of just, bones are just there. They don't, they give us structure, they're strong, but they don't change, they don't grow or shrink. They're just bones. That's how we think of them. But in reality, bones are, building and unbuilding, for lack of a better term, constantly. They're growing and shrinking constantly. And so as we're building and then parts are dying away and rebuilding, it's a balance. And for, healthy, normal young adult, it's, up through our 20s or so, we're getting stronger by the day.
Yeah.
And at that point, they hold steady. But after a while, the breaking down part happens a little faster than the building up part, and we start to lose a little bone strength. So osteoporosis is the name of the disease for when we've lost a certain amount and our bones become much weaker and more brittle.
How can we kind of know that maybe we've got an issue with this?
It's a little scary because we usually don't. Most of the symptoms happen behind the scenes and they're hard to pick out. For instance, back pain. Well, that comes with just about everything, right?
Yeah.
And as you age, back pain is just a part of life a lot of times. And so back pain can be a very common symptom of osteoporosis. A lot of times, good question. See, I love when he throws a good question at me. Because the vertebra going up and down your spine, as they become weaker, one or two of them may crack a little or shrink in a little, and so you're starting to have back pain, and you may think it's something related to the nerves or the muscles back there, but it could simply be that your bones are weakening and they're compressing in on each other. Some people may think they have a slipped disc or a ruptured disc, and a lot of times it's just the vertebra itself from the bone weakening. Along with that, a symptom that, and if Jared were here, there would be a joke about this, so I'm glad he's not, loss of height. As your spine is compressing, you can get shorter. Also, stooped posture. So yeah, if Jared were here this morning, there would be a height joke made on me. So I'll get that out for him. He can just rest easy right now, knowing
he can enjoy that.
Knowing there's a height joke on me to come. But also, and then how we unfortunately usually catch it is a fracture we didn't expect. A simple fall, a simple bump, scrape, and all of a sudden we got a broken bone that should not have broken a bone. And then as we're getting that treated, the doctors will go ahead and scan it, and what do you know? You've had a significant bone loss over the years, and that's unfortunately how we often find it.
Wow.
Yeah, it sneaks up on you. That's why it's a little scary.
Yeah,
it can sneak up on you completely.
There just fine, and
you
all
think
of a
you're
sudden,
healthy as a horse, and then you've got a broken bone and realize all your bones are brittle, and now we've got problems. So it's scary.
And as we grow older, mending those broken bones is a little bit more significant as far as getting better than it would be if we were younger.
Of course, just like back to what we said. If you're younger, you're still building a lot quicker than you're losing, and so it heals. Kids can break something. It seems like the next day they're fine. It's not fair. But yeah, as you get older, you don't build it back.
Yeah. Hey, I always heard that drinking milk would make strong bones. What are some of the causes and risk factors of this?
And we'll get to that. That's a good one. But there's 4 or 5 that we have no control over. This is something else that's scary. Gender. It happens more often to females than males. Age, it happens more often, as we said, as you get older. Race, it is much more common in people that are white or of Asian descent than of any other nationality. And then family history of osteoporosis or broken hips, things like that. A lot of times we say, do you have broken hips in your family? Because back then we didn't know about osteoporosis so much. We might not have had a diagnosis, but if you had that family member. And then your body frame, you know what? Bigger boned people have a lot more buildup of bone, to still be healthy, even some breaks down. So smaller framed people are at much more risk. Those 5 things we have no control over. And so that's something to be scared of. But I will throw this out there. The reason this was on my mind to talk about today, study came out last week. We think about osteoporosis, in the pharmacy and medical community as older, white, female. That's the 3 things we're looking for in small frame. And that triggers our mind to think. Study came out last week. They looked at men and women aged 35 to 50. We would not have thought about osteoporosis in these people for any reason. And over a fourth of both men and women, so 25% or greater in both men and women between 35 and 50 in the study, had a precursor to osteoporosis. They already had significant bone loss, not enough to classify them as having the disease yet, but well on their way to having it. And these are otherwise healthy 35 to 50, both male and female. So we're learning more about the disease and learning it's not just our frail, older white ladies we need to be looking at.
I wonder why that 35 to 50 range.
Well, let's get to some more causes and risk factors that unfortunately will explain that. Sedentary lifestyle, lack of exercise, lack of weight bearing and those type of exercises.
Why do you look at me when you say that? I mean,
well, it's either look at the camera and offend them or look at you and offend you. This is much more enjoyable.
All right, gotcha.
Increased alcohol intake, more, and it's a fair amount, more than 2 drinks a day on average. So that's a fair amount to get to that number of saying, hey, at this point you're a risk factor. Tobacco use. But then also just low calcium and vitamin D in the diet. That lack of milk, we don't eat as well as we should. We don't drink the things we should. We're all bad about that. I'll raise my hand here, me too. But low calcium, vitamin D intake, those things are big factors. And then starting in that 35 to 50 range is where both men and women start having a decrease in hormones. Estrogen primarily in women, testosterone in men. Estrogen and testosterone are really good for bones. As we age and those numbers go down, that our bones also start to weaken. So that's why that 35 to 50. Also, other things to consider, if you have way too high thyroid hormone, it has an adverse effect on bones. So if you're having to take thyroid medication, if we overshoot with the dose, we can weaken your bones. And then any eating disorders or intestinal disorders that prevent our absorbing the nutrients, the calcium, the vitamin D that we need. Unfortunately, some medicines as well, long-term steroids. If you got if you got rheumatoid arthritis, there's a good chance you've had a lot of steroids. Steroids are bad for your bones. Certain chemotherapy. It's a necessity when you got the cancer, but they weaken your bones. And then last, if you've had to have an organ transplant, which a lot more people than we realize have, those medicines can weaken your bones as well.
Yeah. Osteoporosis.
Osteoporosis.
That's
There
right.
you go.
That's right. I'm glad we got a pharmacist here who can say that word. And if we stay with it too much longer, then I'll tell them what I'll call it. But can this be prevented?
To some extent, yes. We obviously can't prevent aging. There's only one alternative to that, right?
True.
But adequate diet protein intake. Protein's big for building bones. Eating enough protein. Now, let me go ahead and say this. There are very few people in our listening audience that don't get enough protein. There's a lot of things we don't get out of our diet, but as Americans, usually protein we're not neglecting. But just not getting adequate protein, vegetarians, vegans, pescatarians sometimes not getting enough protein. So just that's out there, know that. Not getting adequate calcium or vitamin D. So to prevent it, I need at least 1,000 milligram a day of calcium, a little more as I get older. I need 600 to 800 units of vitamin D a day, a lot of times a little more as I get older. Because vitamin D is what allows my body to use that calcium. I got to have vitamin D to use the calcium. Maintaining a proper body weight. We said small frame people more likely to get osteoporosis and have fractures in certain bones. Unfortunately, other end of the spectrum, people that are carrying too much weight are more likely to have fractures in other bones. So, it's not good on either side, trying to maintain an ideal proper body weight. And then proper exercise, which in this case, oddly enough, some of the greatest exercise in the world, swimming, cycling, ellipticals, those are great. Some of the best exercise in the world. Doesn't help with this because they're not weight bearing. To keep your bones as strong as you need to be, it's weight bearing. Up on your feet, running, jogging, walking, those sort of things that you're bearing your entire body weight are what build your bones. And also some strength training with weights as well for your upper body to keep those bones strong. That's how we can prevent it as best as possible.
Yeah. Osteoporosis.
There you go.
Look at this. Look at this. Let's talk just a second. We got a couple of minutes here, and I want to get back to this thing about milk.
All right.
All right. There's and you can get 0%, 1%, 2%, and whole milk. Which is which, and which do we need to help strengthen our bones? You know?
Yes, and fortunately, on those it doesn't matter as much.
Okay.
That is a measure of how much of the milk fat is left in. So what level of fat is left in and things of that sort in the milk. Primarily, though, our milk is often fortified with extra calcium anyway. And regardless of which milk you're choosing, and you can look at the labels, there may be slightly more in one or the other, but predominantly, milk is going to have calcium in it, whichever milk fat percent it has. And so you can get an adequate amount of calcium from milk, regardless of which one you're drinking more often than not.
All right, so how can the disease be treated, and where do they go, and what do they do if they think they've got symptoms of this and looking to get better?
All right, so let's tackle a couple of those. First, if you want to get checked, I'll say this, people often ask me, what does it mean to get checked?
Not like an oil change.
How many needles are we talking? Are they chopping something off to look at it? No. To get checked for your bone density for osteoporosis, it's real simple. You lay on a table and a scan passes over you, and about 30 seconds later you're done, and nothing has poked you or stuck you or touched you, and so they can tell you real quick. And so it's easy to get tested. Let's put it that way. But if you find you have it or have bone loss leading to osteoporosis, even if you're not there yet, there are things we can do to treat it, and that's good. The staples of therapy are drugs. Another word, you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Bisphosphonates. That's my long word for the day. Stick with osteoporosis for now, you got it. They're very common drugs. Most people have heard of them. Fosamax, Actonel, Beniva. They're either once a week or once a month drugs, and they're great at what they do, which, however, is only maintaining the bone you have. Unfortunately, that is the staple of treatment for finding out you don't have enough bone density. The best we can often do for you is maintain what you have left. We don't want it to get worse. We want to be careful and not fall and break more things, but we can't really build back a lot of bone in most cases. Our staple of therapy is to keep what you got and not slip further. So obviously catching it earlier is better than catching it later, because it's real easy to get some medicine to keep what you got. And so that's the staple of therapy, is these Fosamax, Actonel, Beniva. They're called bisphosphonates.
Is that prescription medication?
Those are prescription. Okay. They're not highly, I tell people they're not highly invasive. They're, either once a week or once a month drugs. It's not an every morning, 2 or 3 times a day kind of pill that you have to remember. It's once a week, once a month, and they'll maintain what you got. And they're not too many side effects. They're pretty easy for people to take. And those are our main therapies. There are alternatives. I mentioned that as men and women lose their hormones as they age, we lose bone density. And so replacing hormones is often a way to maintain bones. There's a lot of issues that come with that, side effects of hormone medications, and so keep that in mind. But that's an issue and an option we have. But then 2 newer medications. There's one that's a once every 6-month injection that, like the drugs we've talked about, maintain the bone you have. And it's generally better at it than the drugs we've talked about already. It's called Prolia. It's a once every 6-month injection. Now, I'll let you guess what the one downfall of Prolia is. I bet you can guess, is it's nice and new and shiny. Want to guess what it is?
Go ahead.
It's real expensive.
It's
real expensive. For a mortgage, you can get your Prolia, right? And so, your insurance may cover it. It may not be that expensive. You have to go to your doctor's office to get it usually, but it's out there. And then the last one I want to talk about, because it's totally different than anything else. It's a drug called Forteo. It is an injection as well, but it's the only drug that we have currently available that will build back bone. It's the only drug that we can, if this is your bone density now, everything else just keeps you here and keeps you from going down. It's the only drug we have that's going to build it back up. You can only take it for 2 years, and then you have to come off of it and then take these other drugs to maintain what you've built if you have. But it's the only drug out there that's going to build some bone. So there is some hope of building back bone. My mother-in-law had to take it. So, I have seen it. It's out there. It works. It does help. But you can only take it for 2 years, and then they have to pull you off of it. And so we do have a little hope of building some bone back. But in general, what we got is where we stay, and we want to catch things early if possible so that you don't lose too much.
So your suggestion is that you see your local physician, is that correct?
Used to, we would say, don't even ask them about it until you're significantly older, and then go, hey, you might want to check your bone density. But a lot of doctors are more proactive about this now, and they'll say, hey, as you age, as you're getting into that 35 to 50 range, and then on past that, at some point, once every couple of years, we'll look and check your bone density to make sure we catch it early enough. And so doctors are often going to remind you about it. But if your doctor hasn't in a while, that's something you may want to ask about. Have we checked my bone density lately? They may have done it without you knowing it at some point in some type of health screening or health fair too. And so, get your bone density checked, because the earlier we see a slight loss, the earlier we can get you on something to prevent problems down the road.
Is there any over-the-counter medication that's available?
Not to treat osteoporosis, but to prevent it, yes. Those calcium and vitamin D we talked about, if you're not getting enough out of your diet, or in vitamin D's case, sunlight exposure, there are multiple over-the-counter forms of calcium and vitamin D, often in the same pill, so you don't have to take a bunch of different stuff. You can get them together. And those are extremely important for maintaining bone health throughout your life, whether you have osteoporosis or not. You know, maintaining and building bone health through calcium and vitamin D is a huge issue.
Osteoporosis.
There you go. You finally got it.
Yeah, at the end of the segment, Jacob Johnson is our guest this morning from Marble City Pharmacy. And right before we go, I know that summer is not officially here, but it is here.
It feels like it.
And you guys are set to go in the gift department for summer.
It's looking good. We've hired Beth some new help lately, so she's getting a little bit of help getting stuff done in the gift department. We had our sidewalk sale last weekend to get rid of some of the old, to make room for the new. Things are going good. It looks great in there. They've done a lot of work, and there's tons of stuff to come look at.
All right, appreciate you being with us, Jacob Johnson from Marble City Pharmacy on Health Monday. More Daybreak right after this.